Now, if his luck holds and the lesion isn't located at a bifurcation and there's not too much calcification, a lot of doctors would advise you to begin modestly with an angioplasty and wait and see. To my own way of thinking, though, you have to offset the relative lack of trauma and expense. We can't forget expense now, can we, what with Medicare's pulling in its horns and this new chappie's promising no new taxes? We have to offset those psychological pluses against the minus kicker, the likelihood of recurrent stenosis and having to do it all over again, the odds of which, to be honest about it, are on the shady side of 50%. For my money, not to keep beating about the bush, the artery bypass is the sucker that does the job. What do you say in the States? Never send a boy when you can send a man? Now, ma'am, how much do you want to know about the heart? Everything, Janice says, starry-eyed over this man willing to explain things to her, her tongue peeking through as she prepares to concentrate. Way to go, Dr. Ullman gamely says, and makes a big fist with one hand and with the fingers of the other begins to show her how the coronary arteries lie on the heart's surface, their branches burrowing into the hard-working muscle. Harry has seen this demonstration earlier in the day and signals Judy to come closer to his bed. She is wearing the pink party dress she came down on the airplane in, and the stiff white ribbon around her braided pigtail. Yesterday's experience at sea has given her a sunburn on her nostril wings and beneath her clear green eyes, where her freckles are thinnest. She keeps staring at his heart monitor. "What do you see?" he asks her huskily. "It's like a little twitchy worm that just goes and goes." "That's life," he tells her. "That's your granddad." Judy yields to an impulse. Leaning against the bed, she tries to embrace the old man, disarraying and tugging at the tubes and wires attached to his upper body. "Oh, Grandpa," she confesses, "it's all my fault." Her breath feels hot on his neck. He hugs her as best he can with the arm not pierced by the IV. "Don't be silly. What's your fault?" "Yesterday I scared you out there." "You didn't scare me, sweetie. The Gulf of Mexico scared me." "You weren't scared?" Tearily, she shakes her head no. This seems another wonder to him. "Why not?" he asks. Her smooth little face gets that tiptoe look which in a mature woman signals that she is about to lie. She says, a bit mincingly, "You were out there with me, Grandpa, and there were lots of other boats around." He renews his trammeled hug, and her slender little body is unresisting. Something has gone out of it. He feels a roughness in his throat, perhaps from yesterday's gulps of salt water. His eyes film over with the hot relief of tears. On television, men with wide shoulders and narrow hips move like gods on Olympus among the clouds. You can't even see who is white and who is black. Blinded though they are, the announcers keep yelling in those straining, excited voices they have. A commercial shows a Subaru bumpily climbing a mountain of dead car chassis. "Want to change the channel?" he asks Judy, and moves her hand from his bandaged wrist, where it is hurting him, to the hand control for the television set on its beige metal arm. He lies back, feeling the white walls stretch all around him just like the ocean yesterday, his bed a raft. Judy flickers the TV through a wrestling match, a parade, a scare commercial with Carl Malden barking that with American Express traveler's checks you can't be robbed, a man and a woman in black skating in a sparkle of ice, a tongue-in-cheek horror movie about being a teenage werewolf in London, and another movie called, they learn from the station break, The Fists of Bruce Lee. The kung fu violence is arresting enough to hold Judy's attention for a few minutes. Fragments of what Dr. Ullman is confidentially, yet in that peppy Australian way quite audibly telling Janice, weave into the action. Murderous kicks turned into slow motion by the director, graceful blurs of oriental color. Preliminary test. Pulmonary congestion common after a myocardial infarction. Backup of blood, leakage into the lung tissue. Hydralazine. Inflammation of the pericardium. Dilantin. Skin rashes, diarrhea, loss of hair. Hate to go to a pacemaker for a man this age. Bruce Lee kicks out once, twice, thrice, and 3 handsomely costumed thugs slowly fly toward the corners of the room, furniture shattering like fortune cookies, and suddenly Judy has switched channels again, coming upon a commercial Harry loves, for some skin moisturizer whose name he can never remember, but he could never forget the look on the model's face. the way she smiles over her naked shoulder as she slinks behind the bathroom door, and then when she comes out, the satisfied wicked purr in her expression, her wet hair turbaned in a bulky soft towel, her breasts showing cleavage, but the nipples just off the screen. If only the screen were a little wider. If he could only slow the action down like in a kung fu movie. For a 30th of a second there might have been a nipple. And the way she relaxes into a blue velvet sofa, as if ever so profoundly satisfied. Lovely eyes closed with their greasy lids, her eyebrows slightly thick like Cindy Merkett's. And then the part coming up where she is dressed to go out for the evening, all moisturized still beneath her gold lame. No, wait, honey. He senses that Judy is about to change channels and reaches out to stop her, but fails. It's back to the werewolf. The boy's face is growing fur as he crouches in a telephone booth. And then the ice skaters, the woman sliding backward at you with her little skirt flipped up. And then the back of Harry's wrist stings from the tug he gave the IV, and a flirtatious ghost of yesterday's pain plays across his chest. The Demerol must be wearing off. They gave him a little brown bottle of nitroglycerin on his bedside table next to the telephone and a glass of stale water, and he shakes one out shakily and puts it beneath his tongue as they have taught him. It burns under his tongue, and then, the funny thing, a minute or two later, his asshole tingles. "How much junk food does he eat?" Dr. Ullman is asking. "Oh," Janice says with enthusiasm, "he's a real addict." His wife is, it occurs to Harry, a channel that can't be switched. The same slightly too high forehead, the same dumb, stubborn slot of a mouth, day after day, same time, same station. She looks up into the doctor's big red blonde face as if at an instructively beautiful sunset. The two of them make a duo, dividing him up. One takes the inside, the other the outside. Now a cherry-red Subaru is spinning along one of those steep, spiky western landscapes that the makers of automobile commercials love. A shimmery model, skinny as a rail, dimpled and square-jawed like a taller Audrey Hepburn from the Breakfast at Tiffany's days, steps out of the car, smiling slyly and wearing a racing driver's egg helmet with her gown made up, it seems, of ropes of shimmering light. Maybe Nelson is right. Toyota is a dull company. Its commercials show people jumping into the air because they're saving a nickel. The channel jumps back to the Fiesta Bowl parade. Youth, flowers, a giant Garfield the cat jiggling majestically along. Harry's internal climate of drugs and their afterwash seems to be undergoing a distant storm like sunspots or those faint far hurricanes on Jupiter. Along with history, Harry has a superstitious interest in astronomy. Our Father who art in heaven. Tons of fat through his system, Dr. Ullman is saying. Rivers of it, some of it has to stick. Marbled meats, pork sausage, liverwurst, bologna, hot dogs, peanut butter, salted nuts. He loves all that stuff. He's a terrible nibbler, Janice chimes in, anxious to please, courting, betraying her husband. He loves nuts. Worst thing for him, absolutely the worst, Dr. Ullman responds, his voice speeding up, losing its drawl. Full of fat, not to mention sodium, and cashews, macadamia nuts. They're the worst, macadamia nuts, but it's all bad, bad. In his intensity, he has begun to crouch above her as if over a slippery putt. Anything made with hydrogenated vegetable shortenings, coconut oil, palm oil, butter, lard, egg yolk, whole milk, ice cream, cream cheese, cottage cheese, any organ meats, all these frozen TV dinners, commercial baked goods, almost anything you buy in a package, in a wax paper bag, any of it, ma'am, is poison, bloody poison. I'll give you a list you can take home. You can, but my daughter-in-law is studying nutrition. She has a lot of lists already. On cue, Prue appears, hesitantly filling the doorway with her womanly wide frame in its nappy traveling suit of three-dimensional checks. Unawares, Janice goes on buttering up Dr. Ullman. She's been saying everything you've been saying for years to Harry, but he just won't listen. He thinks he's above it all. He thinks he's still a teenager. The doctor snorts. Even the teenagers with their supercharged metabolism aren't burning up the fats and sugars this country's food industry is pumping into them. We're having adolescent heart attacks all over. His voice softens to southerliness again. God's green creation. Prue steps forward in her 3 dimensions. Janice, I'm sorry, she says, still shy of using her mother-in-law's name. I know he shouldn't have so many visitors at once, but Nelson is getting frantic. He's afraid we're going to miss the plane. Janice stands, so briskly the wheelchair recoils under her. She staggers, but keeps her feet. I'll leave. You say hello and bring Judy when you come. Harry, I'll drop by on my way back when I've put them on the plane. But there's an origami demonstration tonight at the village I don't want to miss. She exits, and Judy switches off the television in the middle of an especially amusing slapstick commercial for Midas mufflers and exits with her. Dr. Ullman shakes Prue's hand fiercely and tells her, baring his shark-white teeth, "Ma'am, teach this stubborn bastard to eat." He turns and punches Harry with a loosened fist on the shoulder. "For half a century, my friend," he says, "you've been pouring sludge through your gut." Then he too is gone. He and Prue, suddenly alone together, feel shy. "That guy," Harry says, "keeps attacking America. If he doesn't like the food here, why doesn't he go back to where he came from and eat kangaroos?" His tall daughter-in-law fiddles with her long red hands, twisting at her wedding ring, yet moves forward to the foot of the bed. "Harry," she says, "listen, we're stricken at what's happened to you." "You and who else?" he asks, determined to be debonair. "Bogey at the airport in Casablanca, Flynn at Little Bighorn, George Sanders in the collapsing temple to Dagon, Victor Mature having pushed apart the pillars." "Well, Nelson, obviously. I don't think he slept a wink last night, you were so much on his mind. He can't say it, but he loves you." Harry laughs, gently, since there is this Valentine inside him that might rip. "And the kid and I have something going between us. Not sure love is what you'd call it." Since she hesitates in replying, looking at him with those staring, mud-flecked greenish eyes that Judy's clearer, paler eyes were distilled from, he goes on, "I love him all right, but maybe it's a him that's long gone. A little tiny kid looking right up to you while you're letting him down. You never forget it." "It's still there, under it all," Prue assures him, without saying what it all is. Her sphinx-dew hair is slightly wild, Harry sees in the brilliant hospital light. Colorless stray filaments stand out all around her head. He feels there is a lot she wants to say, but doesn't dare. He remembers how she appeared hovering above him as he lay breathless on the beach, anxious and womanly, her face in shadow, unlookable at, and right beside it, like a thunderhead, the face of Ed Silberstein's son, his salt-stiffened black curls, his butternut skin, his prick making its bump in his tight black trunks, beside the five-sided Omni logo. A smoothie on the make, on the rise. Hi-ho Silvers. "Tell me about you, Prue," Rabbit says, the words gliding out of his hoarse throat as if his being in bed and chemically relaxed has moved them to a new level of intimacy. "How's it going for you with the kid, with Nelson?" People do respond, surprisingly, to the direct approach, as if we're all just waiting in our burrows to be ferreted out. She says without hesitation, "He's a wonderful father to the children. That I can say sincerely. Protective and concerned and involved, when he can focus." Why can't he always focus? Now she hesitates, unthinkingly revolving the ring on her finger. As if all of Florida is made up of interchangeable parts, a Norfolk pine stands outside his hospital window and holds an invisible bird that makes the sound of wet wood squeaking. He heard it this morning, and he hears it now. His chest seems to echo with a twinge. Just to be on the safe side, he takes another nitroglycerin. Prue blurts out, "The lot worries him, I think. Sales have been off these last years with the weaker dollar and all, and what he says are boring models, and I think he's afraid Toyota might lift the dealership." "It would take a bomb to make them do that. We've done okay by Toyota over the years. When Fred Springer got that franchise, Japanese products were still considered a joke." "That was a long time ago, though. Things don't stand still," Prue says. "Nelson has trouble being patient, and to tell the truth, I think it scares him to have none of the old-timers around anymore. Charlie, and then Manny, and now Mildred, even though he fixed her. And you down here half the year, and Jake gone over to Volvo Olds over near that new mall in Oriole, and Rudy opening his own Toyota Mazda over on 422. He feels alone, and all he has for company are these flaky types from North Brewer." At the thought of these flaky types, more of her hairs, glowing like electric filaments here in Florida's fluorescent light, stand out from her head in agitation. She is trying to tell him something. Something is slipping. But how can a man tied up helpless in bed track it down? Rabbit has his heart to nurse. This is life and death. His drugs must be wearing off. The deadly awfulness of his situation is beginning to rise in his throat, burning like an acid regurgitation. His asshole tingles right on schedule. He has something evil and weak inside him that might betray him at any minute into that icy blackness Bernie talked about. Prue shrugs her wide shoulders in delayed answer to his question about how it was going. What's a life supposed to be? They don't give you another for comparison. I love the big house and Pennsylvania. In Akron we only ever had apartments, and the rent was always behind, and it seemed like the toilet bowl always leaked. Rabbit tries to lift himself onto her level, out of his private apprehension of darkness, its regurgitated taste. You're right, he says. We ought to be grateful. But it's hard being grateful. It seems like from the start you're put here in a kind of fix, hungry and scared, and the only way out is no good either. Hey, listen. Listen to me. You're still young. You're great-looking. Smile. Smile for me, Teresa. Prue smiles and comes around the end of the bed and bends down to give him a kiss. Not on the mouth this time, like in the airport, but on the cheek, avoiding the tubes feeding oxygen into his nose. Her close presence feels huge, checked, clothy. A cloud come over him like the shadow of that hull on its side out there on the Gulf, where it was cold and hot both at once. He feels sick. The facts of his case keep wanting to rise in his throat, burning on the verge of making him gag. You're a sweet man, Harry. Yeah, sure. See you in the spring up there. It seems terrible us leaving like this, but there's this party in Brewer Nelson's determined to go to tonight, and changing plane reservations is impossible anyway. Everything's jammed this time of year, even into Newark. What can you do, he asks her. I'll be fine. This is probably a blessing in disguise. Put some sense into my old head. Get me to lose some weight. Go for walks, eat less crap. The doc says I gotta become a new man. And I'll paint my toenails. Prue, standing tall again, says in a level, low voice he has not exactly heard before, aimed flat at him as a man, Don't change too much, Harry. She adds, I'll send Nelson in. If the kid's wild to go, tell him to just go. I'll catch him later up there. Her mouth pinches down at one corner. Her face goes slightly stiff with the impropriety of his suggestion. He has to see his father, she says. Prue exits. The white, clean world around Harry widens. When everybody leaves, he will give himself the luxury of ringing for the nurse and asking for more Demerol, and see how the eagles are doing in the fog, and close his eyes for a blessed minute. Nelson comes in carrying little Roy in his arms, though visitors under 6 years old aren't supposed to be allowed. The kid wears the child like defensive armor. As long as he's carrying a kid of his own, how much can you say against him? Roy stares at Harry indignantly, as if his grandfather being in bed connected with a lot of machinery is a threatening trick. When Harry tries to beam him a smile and a wink, Roy, with a snap of his head, hides his face in his father's neck. Nelson, too, seems shocked. His eyes keep going up to the monitor, with its orange twitch of on-running life, and then gingerly back to his father's face. Cumbersomely keeping his grip on the leaden, staring child, Nelson steps toward the bed and sets a folded copy of the news press on the chrome-edged table, already holding the water glass and the telephone and the little brown bottle of nitroglycerin. Here's the paper when you feel like reading. There's a lot in it about that Pan Am crash you're so interested in. They think they know now exactly what kind of bomb it was. There's a kind with a barometric device that activates a timer when a certain altitude is reached. Up, up. The air thins. The barometer registers. The timer begins to tick as the plane snugly bores through darkness, and the pilot chats on the radio while the cockpit lights burn and wink around him, and the passengers nod over their drinks in their slots of pastel plastic. The image, like a seed at last breaking its shell in moist soil, awakens in Harry the realization that even now, as he lies here in this antiseptic white fog, tangled in tubes and ties of blood and marriage, he is just like the people he felt so sorry for, falling from the burst-open airplane. He, too, is falling, helplessly falling, toward death. The fate awaiting him behind this veil of medical attention is as absolute as that which greeted those bodies fallen smack upon the boggy Scottish earth like garbage bags full of water. Smack, splat, bodies bursting across the golf courses and heathery lanes of Lockerbie drenched in night. What met them was no more than what awaits him. Reality broke upon those passengers as they sat carving their airline chicken with the unwrapped silver, or dozing with tubes piping Barry Manilow into their ears, and that same icy black reality has broken upon him. Death is not a domesticated pet of life, but a beast that swallowed baby Amber and baby Becky, and all those Syracuse students and returning soldiers, and will swallow him. It is truly there under him, vast as a planet at night, gigantic and totally his. His death. The burning intensifies in his sore throat, and he feels all but suffocated by terror. "Thanks," he hoarsely tells his son. "I'll read it when you go. Those damn Arabs. I'm nervous about your missing your plane." "Don't be. We've got tons of time still. Even Mom can't get lost on the way, can she?" "Drive east from here to 75, and then south to exit 21. The road feels like it's going nowhere, but after 3 miles the airport shows up." Harry remembers his own drive along that weird highway, the lack of billboards, the palm trees skinny as paint drips, the cocoa-colored chick in the red Camaro and stewardess cap who tailgated him and then didn't give him a sideways glance, her tipped-up nose and pushed-out lips, and it seems unreal, coated in a fake sunshine like enamel, like that yellow sunlight they make on TV shows from studio lights. He didn't have a worry in the world back then. He was in paradise and didn't know it. He feels his body sweating from fear. He smells his own sweat, clammy like something at the bottom of a well, and sees Nelson standing there bathed in the artificial light of the world that hasn't broken through into death yet, neat and taut in the putty-colored suit he is wearing instead of the denim jacket he wore on the flight down, but with his shirt collar still open, so he looks like an all-night gambler who took off his tie in a poker game, down here nearly a week and hardly ever saw the sun. The little smudge of his mustache annoys Harry, and the kid keeps calling attention to it, sniffing and touching the underside of his nose as if he smells his father's clammy fear. He says, "Also, Dad, I noticed the Deion Sanders case is being pushed back into the sports pages, and somewhere in Section B there's an article about fighting Flab that'll give you a laugh." "Yeah, Flab. I'm flabby on the inside even." This is the cue for his son to look sincere and ask, "How are you doing anyway?" The kid's face goes a little white around the gills, as if he fears his father will really tell him. His haircut is annoying, too, short on top and too long in the back, that pathetic rat tail, and the tiny earring. Pretty good, considering. "Great. This big beefy doctor with the funny accent came out and talked to us and said that the first one is the one a lot of people don't survive, and in your case now, for a while at least, it's just a matter of changing your lifestyle a little. That guy has a thing about potato chips and hot dogs. If God didn't want us to eat salt and fat, why did he make them taste so good?" Nelson's eyes get dark and swarmy, the way they do whenever his father mentions God. The conversation keeps sticking. It doesn't flow. Harry keeps thinking how he is falling. The kid is like a weight on his chest. "Come on," he says to himself, "try. You only live once." "Prue told me you were up all night with worry." "Yeah, well, she exaggerates, but sort of. I don't know why I can't sleep down here. It all feels phony to me, and there's all this stuff back in Brewer I should be tending to." "Like it the lot? Between holidays is a slow week usually. Everybody's feeling broke after Christmas." "Well, yeah, and other stuff. I keep feeling hassled." "That's life, Nelson. Hassle." "I suppose." Harry says, "I've been thinking about our conversation, about Toyotas being so dull. Give 'em credit. They're trying to sex the line up. They're coming out with this Lexus luxury sedan next fall, V8 engine even." "Yeah, but they won't let us regular dealerships handle it. They're establishing a whole new retail network. Let 'em, it's going to flop anyway. The Japanese aren't Italians. Luxury isn't their bag." "I forgot about that separate Lexus network. I tell you, Nelson, I'm not quite with it. I'm in a fog." "Join the crowd," Nelson says. "And, oh yeah, the stat sheets. I've been thinking about that. Are you having trouble moving the used? Don't get greedy. 10% markup is all you should expect. It's worth shaving the profit just to keep the inventory flowing." "Okay, Dad, if you say so. I'll check it out." The conversation sticks again. Roy squirms in his father's grip. Harry is falling. The light is just a skin of the dark, thinner than an airplane's skin, thinner than an aluminum beer can. Grab something, anything. "She's turned out to be quite a fine woman, Prue," he volunteers to his son. The boy looks surprised. Yeah, she's not bad. And he volunteers, I should try to be nicer to her. How? Oh, you know, clean up my act, try to be more mature. You always seemed pretty mature to me. Maybe too early on. Maybe I didn't set such a good example of maturity. All the more reason, then, for me, I mean. Does Harry imagine it, or is there a stirring, a tiny dry coughing behind the curtain next to him, in the bed he cannot see? His phantom roommate lives. He says, I'm really getting anxious about you making your plane. Sorry about that, by the way. I feel crummy leaving. Prue and I were talking last night if we ought to stay a few more days, but I don't know. You make plans, you get socked in. Don't I know it? What could you do staying? Your old man's fine. He's in great hands. I just have to learn to live with a not-so-great heart. A bum ticker. Charlie's done it for 20 years. I can do it. But then Rabbit adds, threatening to pass into the maudlin, the clingy, the elegiac. But then he's a wiry little Greek, and I'm a big fat Swede. Nelson has become quite tense. He radiates a nervous desire to be elsewhere. Okay, Dad, you're right. We'd better get moving. Give Grandpa a kiss, he tells Roy. He leans the boy in, like shoveling off a wriggling football to kiss his grandfather's cheek. But Roy, instead of delivering a kiss, grabs the double-barreled baby blue oxygen tube feeding into Harry's nose and yanks it out. Jesus, Nelson says, showing emotion at last. You all right? Did that hurt? He whacks his son on the bottom and sets him down on the floor. It did hurt slightly, the sudden smarting violence of it, but Harry has to laugh. No problem, he says. It just sits in there like upside-down glasses. Oxygen, I don't really need it. It's just one more perk. Roy has gone rubber-legged with rage and collapses on the shiny floor beside the bed. He writhes and makes a squawking, breathless noise, and Nelson bends down and hits him again. Don't hit the kid, Harry tells him, not emphatically. He just wanted to do me a favor. As best he can with his free hand, he resettles the two pale blue tubes, one over each ear, as they come from the oxygen box hung on the wall behind him, and resettles the clip, with its gentle enriching whisper, on his septum. He maybe thought it was like blowing my nose for me. You little shit, you could have killed your own grandfather, Nelson explains down at the writhing child who has to be hauled, kicking, out from under the bed. Now who's exaggerating, Harry says. I'm tougher to kill than that, and begins to believe it. Roy, white in the gills just like his father, finds his voice and lets loose a yell and tries to throw himself out of Nelson's grasp. The rubber heels of nurses are scurrying toward them down the hall. The unseen roommate suddenly groans behind his white curtain with a burbly, deep, pulmonary trouble kind of groan. Roy is kicking like a landed fish and must be catching Nelson in the stomach. Harry has to chuckle to think of the child doing that. On one grab, deft. Maybe in his 4-year-old mind he thought the tubes were snakes eating at his grandfather's face. Maybe he just thought they were too ugly to look at. Full though his arms are, Nelson manages to lean in past the tangle of life-supporting connections and give Harry's cheek the quick kiss he meant Roy to bestow. A warm touch of mustache. A sea urchin's sting. The watery monster stirring behind the bed curtain releases another burbling, racking groan from the deeps. Alarmed nurses enter the room. Their cheeks are flushed. The head nurse looms with her waxy woven tresses, like oodles of black noodles or packets of small firecrackers. Oh, yeah, Harry thinks to add as Nelson hurries his yelling, writhing burden away down the hall toward Pennsylvania. Happy 1989. Chapter 2. P.A. Sun and moon rise and fall. The well-worn wheels of nature that in Florida impinge where beach meets sea are in Pennsylvania muffled, softened, sedimented over, clothed in the profoundly accustomed. In the Penn Park quarter-acre that Janice and Harry acquired a decade ago, there is, over toward the neighboring house built of clinker bricks, a weeping cherry tree, and he likes to be back when it blossoms around April 10th. By then, too, baseball has come north. Schmidt this year hitting 2 home runs in the first 2 games, squelching all talk that he was through. And lawns are sending up tufts of garlic. The magnolias and quince are in bloom, and the forsythia is out, its glad, cool yellow calling from every yard like a sudden declaration of the secret sap that runs through everybody's lives. A red haze of budding fills the maples along the curbs, and runs through the woods that still exist, here and there, ever more thinly, on the edge of developments old and new. His first days back, Rabbit likes to drive around, freshening his memory and hurting himself with the pieces of his old self that cling to almost every corner of the Brewer area. The streets where he was a kid are still there, though the trolley cars no longer run. The iron bridges, the railroad yards rust inside the noose of bypasses that now encircles the city. The license plates still have an orange keystone in the middle, but now say, "You've got a friend in Pennsylvania," which he always found sappy, and sappier still those imitation plates that can be bolted on the front bumper and say, "You've got a friend in Jesus." The covers of telephone directories boast the uncommonwealth of Pennsylvania. Behind the wheel of his car he gravitates to Mount Judge, the town where he was born and raised, on the opposite side of Brewer from Penn Park. In this cumbersome sandstone church, with its mismatching new wing, the Mount Judge Evangelical Lutheran, he was baptized and confirmed, in a shirt that chafed his neck like it had been starched in lye. And here, further along Central, in front of a candy store, now a photocopying shop, he first felt himself in love with Margaret Shelkoff in her pigtails and high-top shoes. His heart had felt numb and swollen above the sidewalk squares like one of those zeppelins you used to see in the sky, the squares of cement like city blocks far beneath his floating childish heart. Every other house in this homely borough holds the ghost of someone he once knew who now is gone. Empty to him as seashells in a collector's cabinet, these plain domiciles with their brick-pillared porches and dim front parlors don't change much. Even the slummier row houses, such as he and Janice lived in on Wilbur Avenue when they were first married, are just the same in shape, climbing the hill like a staircase, though those dismal old asphalt sidings, the tints of bruise and dung, have given way to more festive substances imitating rough-hewn stone or wooden clapboards, thicker on some facades than others, so there is a little step up and down at the edges as your eye moves along the row. Harry always forgets what is so hard to picture in flat Florida, the speckled busyness, the antic jammed architecture, the distant blue hilliness forcing in the foreground the gabled houses to climb and cling on the high sides of streets, the spiky retaining walls and sharp slopes crowned by a barberry hedge or tulip bed, slopes planted more and more no longer in lawn but ground cover like ivy or juniper that you don't have to mow once a week with those old-fashioned reel mowers. Some people would rig their mowers with a rope on the handle so they could let it slither clattering down and then pull it back up. Rabbit smiles in his car, remembering those wooden-handled old mowers, and that long-dead Methodist neighbor of theirs on Jackson Road Mom used to feud with about mowing the 2-foot strip of grass between the cement walks that ran along the foundation walls of their houses. The old Methodist couple had bought the house from the Zims when they moved to Cleveland. Carolyn Zim had been so pretty, like Shirley Temple only without the dimple, more of a Deanna Durbin sultriness on this little girl's body, that Mr. and Mrs. fought all the time, Mom said, Mrs. being jealous. He used to wait by his window for a glimpse in the soft evening of Carolyn undressing for bed across the little air space. His room. He can almost remember the wallpaper, its extra yellowed look above the radiator, the varnished shelf where his teddy bears sat, the bushel basket his tinker toy spokes and hubs and his rubber soldiers and lead airplanes lived in. There was a taste, oilclothy, or like hot window-sill paint, or the vanilla and nutmeg when Mom baked a cake, to that room he can almost taste again, but not quite. It moves into the shadows. It slips behind the silver-painted radiator with its spines imprinted with scrolling designs in blurred low relief. Brewer, too, that torpid hive, speaks to him of himself, of his past grown awesomely deep, so that things he remembers personally, V.E. Day or the Sunday Truman declared war on North Korea, are history now, which most of the people in the world know about only from books. Brewer was his boyhood city, the only city he knew. It still excites him to be among its plain flower-pot-colored blocks, its brick factories and row housing and great grim churches all mixed together. everything heavy and solid and built with an outmoded decorative zeal. The all but abandoned downtown, wide Weiser Street, which he can remember lit up and as crowded as a fairgrounds in Christmas season, has become a patchwork of rubble and parking lots and a few new glass-skinned buildings, stabs at renewal mostly occupied by banks and government agencies, the stores refusing to come back in from the malls on Brewer's outskirts. The old Baghdad, once one of a half-dozen first-run movie theaters along Weiser, now stands between two vacant lots, its Arab-style tiles all stripped away, and its marquee, that last advertised XXX double features, peeling and rusting and holding the letters ELP, and on the line below that, SAVME, scrambled remnant of an appeal for historic restoration. The movie palaces of his boyhood, packed with sweet odors and dark velvet, murmurs and giggles and held hands, were history. Help, save me. There had been a kind of Moorish fountain in the lobby, colored lights playing on the agitated water. The music store, Chords and Records, that Ollie Fosnaught used to run 20 years ago a few doors up from the Baghdad, and that then became Fidelity Audio, is still a store, called now the Light Fantastic, selling running shoes, 2 whole windows of them. Must be a market for them among the minorities. Mug and run. In Rabbit's limited experience, the more improvements they've loaded onto running shoes, the more supporting pads and power wedges and scientifically designed 6-ply soles and so on, the stiffer and less comfortable they've become. As bad as shoes. And those running tights the young women wear now, so they look like space women, raspberry red and electric green, so tight they show every muscle right into the crack between the buttocks. What is the point of them? Display. Young animals need to display. Ollie Fosnaught's estranged wife, Peggy, died about 8 years ago of breast cancer that had metastasized. Rabbit reflects that she was the first woman he has slept with who has died, has actually bitten the bullet. Then realizes this is not true. There was Jill. He used to fuck Jill that crazy summer, though he could tell she didn't much like it. Too young to like it. And maybe that whore in Texas, who with a curious, drawling courtesy made him an unvirgin, is dead now, too. They don't have long lives, with the hours, the booze, the beatings, and the drugs that most of them are into, and AIDS. But then, who does live forever? We all take a beating. Must be the way they figure it sooner or later. They're just like us, only more so. These guys in prison now who bite the guards to give them AIDS with their saliva. We're turning into mad dogs. The human race is one big swamp of viruses. Back from the hollow center of Brewer, in the tight brick rows built a century ago when the great mills, now abandoned or turned into factory outlet stores, still smoked and vibrated, spinning textiles and casting steel, life goes on as lively as ever, though in a darker shade. He likes cruising these streets. In April, at least, they brim with innocent energy. 4 leggy young blacks cluster about a bicycle being repaired. A Hispanic girl in the late afternoon slant of sun steps out of her narrow slice of a house in high silk heels and a lilac-colored party dress and a diagonal purple sash, and at her waist a great cloth rose. She is a flower, the moment says, and a swarm of boys has gathered, jostling, bumbling, all dressed in steel-gray windbreakers and green army pants, a gang uniform of sorts, Harry supposes. In Brewer, people still use the streets. They sit out on their steps and little porches in an expectant way you never see in Delian. And the Pennsylvania row houses take a simple square approach to shelter, not so different from those cities of aligned cereal boxes the teacher had you set up with cut-out doors and crayoned on windows in first grade. It makes Harry happy after his winter in Florida, with its condominiums interwoven with golf courses, its tile-roofed towers of time-shared apartments, its villages that aren't villages, its 1,000 real estate angles and prettifications of the flimsy. In the slate-gray 2-door Celica he and Janice lock into their garage when they take the Camry wagon south in the fall, he feels safe gliding along and attracts not too many stares, though in the tough section near the tracks, on the rounded corner step of a boarded-up tavern, a little rounded dark girl in a sweatshirt sits in the lap of a boy already bare-chested, though the spring air is still chilly, and alternately kisses him with a languid and determined open mouth, and gazes insolently at the cars streaming by. The half-naked boy is too stoned to stare, perhaps, but she gives Harry a look through the Selika's side window that would wipe him away if it could. Fuck her. Fuck him, her eyes say. She seemed to sense what he was doing, rolling by, trying to steal a little life for himself out of the South Brewer scene, all these lives that are young and rising like sap where his is old and sinking. There has been a lot of living in these tired streets. The old row houses have been repainted, re-sidinged, updated with aluminum awnings and ironwork railings themselves grown old. They are slots still being filled, with street numbers the builders set in stained glass fanlights above the doors. The blocks were built solid. There would never be any renumbering. Once he lived in one of these, number 326, with Ruth, and used to shop for quick necessities at that corner store there, now called Rosa's Groceries, Tienda de Comestibles, and stare out the window at the rose window of a limestone church, now become the PAL Community Center, Centro Comunidad. The city is quicker than he remembers it, faster on the shuffle as the blocks flicker by, and buildings that he felt when a boy were widely spaced now appear adjacent. The cough drop factory, the skyscraper courthouse, the Y where he tried to take swimming lessons and caught pneumonia instead, coming out into the winter streets with wet hair, are all around corners from one another, and close to the post office with its strange long empty lobby, busy and lighted only at one end where a grate or two is up, and to the Ben Franklin, a proud gilded downtown hotel, now a Ramada Motor Inn. There his class, Mount Judge 51, had its senior prom, he in a summer tux, and Mary Ann in a lavender satin strapless gown whose crinoline petticoats gave them so much trouble in the car afterward they had to laugh, her round white thighs lost in all those rustling folds and hems, Easter eggs in a papery nest, her underpants damp from all the dancing, a spongy cotton pillow stuffed with her moss, a powerful moist musk scent. Mary Ann, the first woman whose smell he made his own, all of her his own, every crevice, every mood, before he went off to do his 2 years in the army, and she, without a word of warning, married somebody else. Maybe she sensed something about him. A loser. Though at 18 he looked like a winner. Whenever he went out with Mary Ann, knowing she was his to harvest in the warm car, he felt like a winner, offhand, calm, his life set at an irresistible forward slant. 2 blocks toward the mountain from the Ben Franklin, under Eisenhower Avenue, where it lifts up in a wooden-railed hump to pass over, the laborers of old hand-dug a great trench to build the railroad tracks into the city, tracks disused now, and the cut, walled in limestone, a pit for tossing beer cans and soda bottles down into, old garbage bags even, mattresses. Brewer was always a tough town, a railroad town, these blocks along the tracks full of tough men, bleary hobos who'd offer to blow you for a quarter, sooty hotels where card games went on for days, bars whose front windows were cracked from the vibration of the trains going past, the mile-long trains of coal cars pulling right across Weiser, stopping all traffic, like the time he and Ruth waited for one to pass, the neon lights of a long-gone Chinese restaurant flickering in her many-colored hair. These red-painted bricks, these imitation gray stones, have seen heartbreaking things but don't know it. A block or 2 toward the mountain from Ruth's old street, Summer Street it was, though they had lived there in spring, summer spelled their end, Rabbit is suddenly driving in a white tunnel, trees on both sides of the street in white blossoms, the trees young and oval in shape and blending one into the other like clouds. The sky's high blue above, tinging the topmost blossoms as it does the daytime moon. And up top, where there is most light, the leaves are beginning to unfold, shiny and small and heart-shaped, as he knows because he is moved enough to pull the Selika to the curb and park and get out and pull off a single leaf to study, as if it will be a clue to all this glory. And up top, where there is most light, the leaves are beginning to unfold, shiny and small and heart-shaped, as he knows because he is moved enough to pull the Selika to the curb and park and get out and pull off a single leaf to study, as if it will be a clue to all this glory. Along the sidewalk in this radiant long grove, shadowy people push baby carriages and stand conversing by their steps, as if oblivious of the beauty suspended above them, enclosing them, already shedding a confetti of petals. They are in heaven. He wants to ask one of them the name of these trees, and how they came to be planted here in these hard brick blocks of Brewer, luxuriant as the ficus trees that line the avenues of Naples down in Florida, but feels shy in their gaze toward him, himself a shadow in this filtered tunnel light of blossoms, a visitor, an intruder from the past, and figures they would not know anyway, or if they did know, would think him too strange for asking. But Janice knows. When he describes this experience to her, she says, "Those are these Bradford pear trees the city is planting everywhere the old elms and buttonwoods are dying off. It blossoms but doesn't bear any fruit and is very hardy in city conditions. It doesn't mind carbon dioxide or any of that." "Why have I never seen them before?" "You have, Harry, I'm sure. They've been putting them in for 10 years now at least. There have been articles in the paper. One of the girls over at the club's husband is on the Improvement Commission." "I never saw anything like it. It broke me all up." She is busy re-establishing them in the Penn Park house, cleaning away the winter's cobwebs and polishing the Kerner silver her mother left her, and she moves away from him impatiently. "You've seen, it's just you see differently now." Since his heart attack, she means, since nearly dying. He faintly feels with Janice now like one of the dead they used to say came back and watched over the survivors, living with them invisibly like the mice in the walls. She often doesn't seem to hear him or take him quite seriously. She goes off across Brewer to visit Nelson and Prue and their children in Mount Judge, or to remake acquaintance with her female buddies over at the Flying Eagle Country Club, where the clay tennis courts are being rolled and readied, and the golf course is already green and receiving play. And she is looking for a job. He thought she had been kidding after seeing Working Girl, but no, the women her age almost all do something now. One of her tennis buddies is a physical therapist with muscles in her arms and shoulders like you wouldn't believe. And another, Doris Eberhardt, who used to be Doris Kaufman, has become a diamond expert and takes the bus over to New York practically every week and carries hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gems back and forth. And a third woman she knows works in the booming new field of de-asbestosizing homes and buildings like factories and schools. It seems there's no end of old asbestos to ferret out. Janice thinks she might go into real estate. A friend of a friend works mostly on weekends and makes over $50,000 a year in commissions. Harry asks her, "Why not go over and help Nelson run the lot? Something's going flooey over there." "That's no fun, hiring myself. And you know how sensitive Nelson is at the idea of us interfering." "Yeah, why is that?" Janice has all the answers now that she is back with her female crowd of know-it-alls over at the Flying Eagle. "Because he's grown up in the shadow of a dominating father." "I'm not dominating. I'm a pushover, if you ask me." "You are to him, psychologically dominating. You're certainly a lot taller, and were a wonderful athlete." "Were is right. A wonderful athlete whose doctors say he has to ride a golf cart and not do anything more violent than brisk walking." "And you don't do it, Harry. I haven't seen you walk further than to the car and back." "I've been doing some gardening." "If you can call it that." He likes to get out into their yard toward the end of the day and break off last year's dead flower stalks and bone-white old poke plants and burn them in a fire kindled on the day's newspaper, the Brewer Standard. The lawn needed a mowing badly when they arrived, and the bulb beds should have been uncovered in March. The snowdrops and crocuses came and went while they were in Florida. The hyacinths are at their peak, and the tulips up, but still with pointy green heads. Rabbit feels peace at the moment of the day when the light dims and the weeping cherry glows in the dusk, its florets like small pink bachelor buttons, and the whole droop-branched, womanly, forgiving shape of it gathering to itself a neon pallor as the shadows lengthen and dampen. The earth's revolution advances a bit more, and the scraps of sunlight linger longer under the April sky with its jet trails and icy horsetails. Just a few golden rags caught in the shaggy forsythia over toward the neighboring mansion built of thin yellow bricks, and the struggling hemlock, and the tallest of the rhododendrons by the palisade fence you see from the kitchen window. Janice put up a bird feeder in the hemlock a few falls ago, even though Doris Kaufman or some other busybody told her it was cruel to birds to put up a feeder when you weren't there in the winter. a plastic sphere tilted like Saturn, and he fills it with sunflower seed when he thinks of it. Putting up bird feeders was the sort of thing her mother used to do, but would never have occurred to Janice when they were younger and old Bessie was still alive. Our genes keep unfolding as long as we live. Harry tastes in his teeth a sourness that offended him on his father's breath. Poor Pop. His face yellowed like a dried apricot at the end. Bessie had the feeders all on wires and poles in her Joseph Street backyard to frustrate the squirrels. The copper beech by their old bedroom, with the nuts that would pop on their own all night, attracted the squirrels, she would say, making her lap and setting her hands on her knees as if God had cooked up squirrels just to bedevil her. Harry had liked Bessie, though she screwed him in her will. Never forgave him for that time in '59. Died of diabetes and its circulatory complications the day after Princess Di gave birth to little Prince William, the last living thing Bessie was interested in. Would there be a future King of England? That and the Hinckley trial. She thought they should hang the boy on the steps of the Capitol, right there in the sunshine. Letting him off as insane was a scandal. The old lady was terrified of having her legs amputated at the end the way her own mother had. Harry can even remember Bessie's mother's name, Hannah Kerner. Hard to believe he will ever be as dead as Hannah Kerner. Before the April evening falls, the birds, big and little, that the feeder attracts, flutter and hop to take a drink or splash their feathers in the blue-bottomed cement pond some earlier owner of this little place, this snug limestone cottage tucked in among the bigger Penn Park homes, created. The cement pool is cracked but still holds water. Like himself, Rabbit thinks, turning toward his house with its lit windows that seem as far away and yet as strangely close as his parents' house used to when he was a kid playing 21 or horse with Mim and the other children of the neighborhood, out at the backboard on the garage in the alley behind their long, narrow yard on Jackson Road. Then, as now, waking from twilight daydreams, he discovered himself nearer a shining presence than he thought, near enough for it to cast a golden shadow ahead of his steps across the yard. Then it was his future. Now it is his past. During those spring months with Ruth on Summer Street, he used to wonder what it would be like to run to the end of the street, straight as far as the eye could see. In the 30 years since, he has often driven this way to Brewer's northwestern edge and beyond, where the highway with its motels, Economy Lodge, Coronet, Safe Haven, melts into farmland, and signs pointing the way to Harrisburg and Pittsburgh begin to appear. One by one, the farms and their stone buildings, the bank barns put together with pegs and beams, and the farmhouses built square to the compass with walls 2 feet thick, are going under to real estate developments. 2 miles beyond the pike to Maiden Springs, where the Merkits used to live before they got divorced, there is a fairly new development called Arrowdale, after the old Arrowhead farm that was sold off by the nieces and nephews of the old spinster who lived there so many years, and had wanted to leave it to some television evangelist as a kind of Salvation Park, a holy roller retreat, but whose lawyers kept talking her out of it. Rabbit, as these recent years have gone by, has watched the bulldozed land lose its raw look, and the trees and bushes grow up so it almost seems houses have always been there. The streets curve as they did in the Merkits development, but the houses are more ordinary. Ranch houses and split levels with sides of aluminum clapboards and fronts of brick varied by flagstone porchlets and unfunctional patches of masonry facing. Cement walks traverse small front yards with azaleas not quite in bloom beneath the picture windows. Bark mulch abounds, and matching porch furniture, and a tyrannical neatness absent in the older, more blue-collar towns like Mount Judge and West Brewer. Ronnie and Thelma Harrison moved to one of these modest new houses when their 3 boys grew up and went off. Alex, the oldest, is an electronics engineer somewhere south of San Francisco. The middle boy, Georgie, who had had reading problems in school, is trying to be a dancer and musician in New York City. And their youngest, Ron Jr., has stayed in the county as a part-time construction worker, though he put in 2 years of college at Lehigh. Thelma doesn't complain about her sons or her house, though to Harry they seem disappointingly ordinary for a woman of Thelma's intelligence and, in his experience of her, passion. Thelma's disease, systemic lupus erythematosus, has cost a fortune over the years, even with the benefits from Ronnie's insurance company's health plan. And it has meant that she has not been able to go back to teaching elementary school when her boys were gone, as she had hoped. Her health has been too erratic. It has kept her at home, where Harry could usually find her. This noon, when he called from a payphone in Brewer, he expected her to answer, and she did. He asked if he might drive over, and she said he might. She didn't sound happy to hear from him, but not distressed either. Resigned merely. He leaves the Celica out front at the curving curb, though usually, over the years, she opened the garage for him and closed the door electronically from within the kitchen to hide the evidence. But now that he is as sick as, if not sicker than she, he doesn't know how much they still have to conceal. The neighborhood is empty during the midday, until the buses bring the children home from school. A single whining engine is at work somewhere out of sight in Arrowdale, and the air holds a pervasive vibration and hum of traffic out of sight on the Maiden Springs Pike. Also out of sight, some birds are chirping, raucous in their nesting frenzy, though the development is skimpy on trees. A robin hops on the bit of lawn beside Thelma's cement walk and thrashes into the air as Harry approaches. He doesn't remember robins as seeming such big, fierce birds. This one looked the size of a crow. He climbs 2 flagstone steps and crosses a little porch. Thelma opens the front door before he can ring the bell. She seems smaller and her hair grayer. Her prim, rather plain face always had a sallow tinge, and this jaundice has deepened, he can observe through the make-up she uses to soften her butterfly rash, a reddening the disease has placed like a soreness across her nose and beneath her eyes. Nevertheless, her deeply known presence stirs him. They lightly kiss when she has closed the door, a long, light-blocking green shade pulled down over its central pane of beveled glass. Her lips are cool and faintly greasy. She stays a time within his embrace, as if expecting something more to happen, her body relaxed against his in unspeakable confession. "You're thin," she says, drawing at last away. "A little less fat," he tells her. "I've a long way to go before I satisfy the doctors and Janice." It seems only natural to mention Janice, though he had to make his tongue do it. Thelma knows the score, and did from the start. The whole affair was her idea, though he grew used to it over the years and built it in. Her walk as she moves away from him into the living room seems stiff, a bit of a waddle. Arthritis is part of the lupus. "Janice," she repeats. "How is Wonder Woman?" Once he confided that he called Janice that, and Thelma has never forgotten. Women don't forget, especially what you wish they would. "Oh, no different. She keeps busy in Florida with all these different groups. She's kind of the baby of our condo, and a shiksa besides. You'd hardly know her, she's so on the ball. Her tennis is terrific, the people who play tell me." He is getting too enthusiastic, he realizes. "But we were happy to leave. It got cold. March was miserable. At least up here you expect it and have the clothes." "You never told us about your heart attack." That "us" is a little payback for his mentioning Janice right off. "You trail your spouses after you like shadows right into bed. They becloud the sheets. It didn't seem worth bragging about. We heard about it from little Ron, who knows a boy who knows Nelson. The Kitty Network. Imagine how I felt learning about it that way. My lover nearly dies and never tells me." "How would we? Whoever tell you? It's not the kind of thing they have cards for in the drugstore." In recent years he and Janice have seen less and less of the Harrisons. Rabbit and Ron were Mount Judge boys together, and played on the high school basketball varsities that, coached by Marty Totherow, were league champions for 2 out of their 3 years in senior high. But he has never liked Ronnie, loud-mouthed, pushy, physically crude, always playing with himself in the locker room, flicking towels, giving red bellies, terrorizing the JVs. Women don't mind this kind of prick as much as Harry does. Part of Thelma's fascination for him has been that she could stand the guy, put up with his sexual tricks and crudity, and remain outwardly such a prim, plain schoolteacher type. Not really plain. With her clothes off, her body is somehow better than her clothes have led you to expect. The first time they ever slept together, her breasts seemed like a girl's in Playboy, nipples like perfect little doorbells. "What can I offer you?" Thelma asks. "Coffee? A beer?" "Both are no-nos for the new me. Do you have anything like Diet Coke or Pepsi?" He remembers Judy's little quavering voice singing "Coke is It" on that long zigzag ride into shore. "Sure. We don't drink much any more ourselves now that we've resigned from the Flying Eagle." "You ever coming back?" "I don't think so. We heard the fees went up again, as you maybe didn't notice, you're so rich, plus the assessment for repairs to the 2 greens close to the road that are always being vandalized. Even 3 years ago, Ronnie figured it was costing him over $80 a round. It wasn't worth it. There's a whole new younger crowd out at the Eagle now that dominates everything. They've changed the tone. It's gotten too yuppie." "Too bad. I miss playing with old Ronnie." "Why? You can't stand him, Harry." "I liked beating him." Thelma nods, as if acknowledging her own contribution to Harry's beating Ronnie. But she can't help it. She loves this man, his soft, pale bemusement and cool, hard heart, his uncircumcised prick, his offhand style, and in her slow dying has not denied herself the pleasure of expressing this love, as much as Harry has been able to bear it. She has kept her strongest feelings contained, and the affair has enriched her transactions with God, giving her something to feel sinful about, to discuss with him. It seems to explain her lupus if she's an adulteress. It makes it easier on him if she deserves to be punished. She goes into the kitchen for the soft drinks. Rabbit roams quietly in the living room. In preparation for his visit, she has pulled not only the narrow shade on the front door, but the wide one on the picture window. He pities the room, its darkness, as if even weak window light would penetrate her skin and accelerate the destruction of her cells, its hushed, funereal fussiness. Wild though she can be, with a streak of defiance as though daring to be damned, Thelma maintains a conventional local decor. Stuffed flowered chairs with broad wooden arms, plush chocolate-brown sofa with needle-pointed scatter-pillows and yellowing lace antimacassars, varnished little knick-knack stands and tabourets, a footstool on which an old watermill is depicted, symmetrical lamps whose porcelain bases show English hunting dogs in gilded ovals, an oppressively patterned, muddy neo-colonial wallpaper, and on every flat surface fringed runners and semi-precious glass and porcelain elves and parrots and framed photographs of babies and graduating sons, and small plates and kettles of hammered copper and pewter, objects to dust around but never to rearrange. This front room, but for the television set hulking in its walnut cabinet with its powdery gray-green face wearing a toupee of doilies and doodads, could have come out of Harry's adolescence, when he was gingerly paying calls on girls whose mothers came forward from the kitchen, drying their hands on their aprons, to greet him in motionless stuffed rooms such as this. The houses he has kept with Janice have had in comparison a disheveled, gappy quality that has nevertheless given him room to breathe. This room is so finished he feels in it he should be dead. It smells of all the insurance policies Ron sold to buy its furnishings. "So tell me about it," Thelma says, returning with a round, painted tray holding, along with the 2 tall glasses of sparkling dark soft drink, 2 matching small bowls of nuts. She sets the tray down on a glass-topped coffee table like an empty, long picture frame. He tells her, "For one thing, I'm not supposed to have stuff like that. Salted nuts, macadamia nuts yet. The worst thing for me, and they cost a fortune. Thel, you're wicked." He has embarrassed her. Her jaundiced skin tries to blush. Her basically thin face today looks swollen, perhaps from the cortisone she takes. "Ronnie buys them. They just happen to be around. Don't eat them if you can't, Harry. I didn't know. I don't know how to act with you. It's been so long." "A couple won't kill me," he reassures her, and, to be polite, takes a few macadamia nuts into his fingers. Nuggets. They are like small, lightweight nuggets with a fur of salt. He especially loves the way, when he holds one in his mouth a few seconds and then gently works it between his crowned molars, it breaks into 2 halves, the surface of the fissure smooth to the tongue as glass, as baby skin. "And cashews, too," he says. "The second worst thing for me. Dry roasted yet." "I seem to remember you like dry roasted." "There's a lot I bet you seem to remember," he says, taking a tasteless sip of his Diet Coke. "First they take the cocaine out, then the caffeine, and now the sugar." He settles back with a small handful of cashews. Dry roasted, they have a little acid sting to them, the tang of poison that he likes. He has taken the rocking chair, painted black with stenciled red designs and a red and yellow flat pillow tied in place, to sit in, and she the plush brown sofa, not sinking into it but perching on the edge, her knees together and touching the raised edge of the coffee table. They have made love on that sofa, which was not long enough to stretch out on, but long enough if both parties kept their knees bent. In a way he preferred it to one of the beds, since she seemed to feel guiltier and less free with herself in a real bed, a bed her family used, and her unease would spread to him. Moving the table, he could kneel beside the sofa and have the perfect angle for kissing her cunt. On and on, deeper into her darkness, where things began to shudder and respond, it got to be an end in itself. He loved it when she would clamp his face between her damp thighs like a nut in a nut-cracker and come. He wondered if a man ever got his neck broken that way. A shadow has crossed Thelma's face, a flinching as if he has consigned her to merely remembering, to the sealed and unrepeatable past like the photographs on the silent television set. But he had meant it more comfortably, settling in his rocker opposite the one person who for these last 10 years has given him nothing but what he needed. Sex. Soul food. "You too," she says, her eyes lowered to the items on the tray, which she hasn't touched. "Have things to remember, I hope." "I just was. Remembering." "You seem sad," he says, accusing, for his presence should make her glad in spite of all. "You don't seem quite you yet. You seem more careful." "Jesus, you'd be too. I'll have some more macadamia nuts if that'll please you." He eats them one by one, and between bouts of chewing and feeling their furry nuggets part so smoothly in his mouth, tells her about his heart attack. The boat, the Gulf, little Judy, the lying on the beach feeling like a jellyfish, the hospital, the doctors, their advice, his attempts to follow it. "They're dying to cut into me and do a bypass. But there's this less radical option they can do first, and I'm supposed to see a guy up here at St. Joseph's about having it done this spring. It's called an angioplasty. There's a balloon on the end of a catheter, a yard long at least. They thread up into your heart from a cut they make just under your groin, the artery there. I had it done kind of in Florida, but instead of a balloon it was a bunch of dyes they put in to see what my poor old ticker actually looked like. It's a funny experience. It doesn't exactly hurt, but you feel very funny, demoralized-like, while it's being done, and terrible for days afterward. When they put the dye in, your chest goes hot like you're in an oven. Deep, it feels too deep. Like having a baby, but then no baby. Just a lot of computerized bad news about your coronary arteries. Still, it beats open heart, where they saw through your sternum for starters. He touches the center of his chest and thinks of Thelma's breasts, their nipples so perfect to suck, waiting behind her blouse, waiting for him to make his move. And then run all your blood through a machine for hours. I mean, that machine is you for the time being. It stops, you die. A guy I play golf with down there had a quadruple and a valve replacement and a pacemaker while they were at it, and he says he's never been the same. It was like a truck ran over him and then backed up. His swing, too, is terrible. He's never got it back. But enough, huh? What about you? How's your health? How do I look? She sips the Coke, but leaves all the nuts in their twin bowls for him. The pattern imitates sampler stitch, squarish flowers in blue and pink. Good to me, he lies. A little pale and puffy, but we all do at the end of winter. I'm losing it, Harry, Thelma tells him, looking up until he meets her eyes. Eyes muddier than Prue's, but also what they call hazel. Eyes that have seen him all over, that know him as well as a woman's can. A wife fumbles around with you in the dark. A mistress you meet in broad daylight right on the sofa. She used to tease him about his prick wearing a bonnet with the foreskin still on. My kidneys are worse, and the steroid dose can't go any higher. I'm so anemic I can hardly drag around the house to do the work, and have to take naps every afternoon. You're right in the middle of my nap time, as a matter of fact. He makes an instinctive motion, tightening his hands on the chair arms to pull himself up, and her voice lifts toward anger. No, don't go. Don't you dare. For God's sake, I don't see you at all for nearly 6 months, and then you're up here a week before you bother to call. Thelma, she's around. I can't just wander off. I was getting reacclimated. I have to take it more easy on myself now. You never loved me, Harry. You just loved the fact that I loved you. I'm not complaining. It's what I deserve. You make your own punishments in life. I honest to God believe that. You get exactly what you deserve. God sees to it. Look at my hands. I used to have pretty hands. At least I thought they were pretty. Now half the fingers, look at them. Deformed. I couldn't even get my wedding ring off if I tried now. He looks, leaning forward so the rocker tips under him, to examine her extended hands. The knuckles are swollen and shiny, and some of the segments with the fingernails go off at a slight angle, but he wouldn't have noticed without her calling his attention to it. You don't want to get your wedding ring off, he tells her. As I remember, you and Ronnie are stuck together with glue. You even eat the glue sometimes, I seem to remember your telling me. Her hands have made Thelma angry, and he is fighting back, as if she blames her hands on him. She says, You always minded that I was a wife to Ronnie, along with serving you whenever it suited. But who were you to mind that, stuck fast to Janice and her money? I never tried to take you away from her, though it would have been easy at times. Would it? He rocks back. I don't know, something about that little mutt still gets to me. She won't give up. She never really figured out how the world is put together, but she's still working at it. Now she's got the idea she wants to be a working girl. She's signed up at the Penn State Annex over on Pine Street for those courses you have to take to get a real estate broker's license. At Mount Judge High, I don't think she ever got over a C, even in home ec. Come to think of it, I bet she flunked home ec, the only girl in the history of the school. Thelma grudgingly smiles. Her sallow face lights up in her shadowy living room. Good for her, she says. If I had my health, I'd be getting out myself. This being a homemaker, they sold us a bill of goods back there in home ec. How is Ronnie, by the way? The same, she says, with a note of that languid, plaintive music the women of the county inject into their saga of their stoic days. Not hustling so hard for the new customers now, coasting along on the old. He's out from under the children's educations, so his only financial burden is me and the doctor bills. Not that he wouldn't be willing to pay for little Ron to finish up at Lehigh if he wanted. It's been a disappointment, his becoming a kind of hippie the way he has. The funny thing was, he was the cleverest of the three at school. Things just came too easy to him, I guess. Harry has heard this before. Thelma's voice is dutiful and deliberately calm, issuing small family talk when both know that what she wants to discuss is her old issue, that flared up a minute ago, of whether he loves her or not, or why at least he doesn't need her as much as she does him. But their relationship at the very start was established with her in pursuit of him, and all the years since, of hidden meetings, of wise decisions to end it, and thrilling abject collapses back into sex, have not disrupted the fundamental pattern of her giving and his taking, of her fearing their end more than he, and clinging, and disliking herself for clinging, and wanting to punish him for her dislike, and him shrugging and continuing to bask in the sun of her love that rises every day whether he is there or not. He can't believe it quite, and has to keep testing her. These kids, he says, taking a bluff tone as if they are making small talk in public instead of enjoying this stolen intimacy behind drawn shades in Arrowdale. They break your heart. You ought to see Nelson when he's down there in Florida and has to live with me a little. The poor kid was jumping out of his skin. Thelma makes an annoyed motion with her hands. Harry, you're not actually the center of the universe. It just feels that way to you. Do you really think Nelson was jumpy because of you? Why else? She knows something. She hesitates, but cannot resist, perhaps, a bit of revenge for his taking her always for granted, for his being in Pennsylvania a week before calling. You must know about Nelson. My boys say he's a cocaine addict. They've all used it, that generation, but Nelson, they tell me, is really hooked, as they say the drug runs him instead of him just using the drug. Harry has rocked back as far as the rocker will take him without his shoes leaving the rug, and remains in that position so long that Thelma becomes anxious, knowing that this man isn't sound inside and can have a heart attack. At last he rocks forward again and, gazing at her thoughtfully, says, That explains a lot. He fishes in the side pocket of his tweedy gray sports coat for a small brown bottle and deftly spills a single tiny pill into his hand and puts it in his mouth under his tongue. There is a certain habituated daintiness in the gesture. "Coke takes money, doesn't it?" he asks Thelma. "I mean, you can go through hundreds, thousands." She regrets her telling him now that the satisfaction is past of shocking him, of waking him up to her existence once again. She is still at heart too much a school-teacher. She enjoys administering a lesson. "I can't believe Janice doesn't know and hasn't discussed it with you, or that Nelson's wife hasn't come to you both." Prue's pretty close-mouthed, he says. "I don't see them that much. Even when we're all in the county, it's on opposite sides of Brewer. Janice is over there at her mother's old place a fair amount, but not me. She owns it, I don't." "Harry, don't look so stunned. It's all just rumor, and really is his business, his and his family's. We all do things our parents wouldn't approve of, and they know it, and don't want to know, if you follow me." "Oh, Harry, damn it, now I've made you sad, when I'm dying to make you happy. Why don't you like me to make you happy? Why have you always fought it?" I haven't fought it, Thel. We've had great times. It's just, we've never been exactly set up for a lot of happiness, and now—" "Now, dear?" "Now I know how you've been feeling all these years." She wants him to explain, but he can't. He is suddenly afflicted by tact. She prompts, "Mortal?" "Yeah, close to it. I mean things wearing thin so you sort of look right through them." "Including me?" "Not you. Cut it out, making me jump through this same fucking hoop all the time. Why do you think I'm here?" "To make love. To screw me." "Go ahead. I mean, come ahead. Why do you think I answered the door?" She has leaned forward across the table, her knees white where they press against the edge, and her face has taken on that melting, crazy look women get at the decision to go with it, to fuck in spite of all, which frightens him now because it suggests a willing slide down into death. "Wait, Thel, let's think about this." On cue, the nitroglycerin has worked its way through, and he gets that tingle. He sits back, suppressing it. "I'm supposed to avoid excitement." She asks, amused somehow by the need to negotiate, "Have you made love with Janice?" "Once or twice, maybe. I kind of forget. You know, it's like brushing your teeth at night. You forget if you did or didn't." She takes this in and decides to tease him. "I made up Alex's old bed for us." "You didn't used to like to use real beds." "I've become very liberated," she says, smiling, extracting what pleasure she can out of his evasions. He is tempted, picturing Thelma in bed naked, her tallowy, willing body, her breasts that have nursed 3 boy babies and 2 men at least, but look virginal and rosy like a baby's thumb-tips, not bumply and chewed and dark like Janice's, her buttocks glassy in texture, and not finely gritty like Janice's, her pubic hair reddish and skimpy enough to see the slit through unlike Janice's opaque thick bush, and her shameless and matter-of-fact mouth, Thelma's, her frank humorous hunger, amused at being caught in the trap of lust over and over, not holding it against him all these years of off and on, in and out. But then he thinks of Ronnie. Who knows where that obnoxious prick's prick has been? Rabbit can't believe he's as faithful as Thelma thinks he is. Not from the way he used to carry on in the locker room, not from the way he was screwing Ruth before Harry was, and cashing in Cindy that time in the Caribbean, and of AIDS. That virus too small to imagine traveling through our fluids, even a drop or two of saliva or cunt slime, and unlocking our antibodies with its little picks, so that our insides lose their balance and we topple into pneumonia, into starvation. Love and death. They can't be pried apart anymore. But he can't tell Thelma that. It would be spitting in her wide-open face. On her own, she sees he isn't up to it. She asks, "Another Coke?" He has drunk it all, he sees, and consumed without thinking both the little bowls of fatty sodium-soaked nuts. "No, I ought to run. But let me sit here a little longer. Being with you is such a relief." "Why? It seems I make claims like all the others." A little lightning of pain flickers across his chest, narrowing his scope of breath. Claims lie heavy around him, squeezing. Now a sexually unsatisfied mistress, another burden. But he lies. "No, you don't. You've been all gravy, Thel. I know it's cost you, but you've been terrific. Harry, please, don't sound so maudlin. You're still young. What, 55? Not even above the speed limit. 56 2 months ago. That's not old for some guys, not for a stocky little plug-ugly like Ronnie. He'll go forever. But if you're the height I am and been overweight as long, the heart gets tired of lugging it all around. He has developed, he realizes, an image of his heart as an unwilling captive inside his chest, a galley slave, or one of those blinded horses that turn a mill wheel. He feels that Thelma is looking at him in a new way, clinically, with a detached, appraising look far distant from the melting, crazy look. He has forfeited something by not fucking her. He has lost full rank, and she is moving him out without even knowing it. Fair enough. With her lupus, he moved her out a long while ago. If Thelma had been healthy, why wouldn't he have left Janice for her in this last decade? Instead, he used all the holes she had and then hustled back into whatever model Toyota he was driving that year and back to Janice in her stubborn, stupid health. What was there about Janice? It must be religious, their tie. It made so little other sense. Two ailing old friends, he and Thelma, sit for half an hour, talking symptoms and children, catching up on the fate of common acquaintances. Peggy Fosnot dead. Ollie down in New Orleans, she heard. Cindy Murkett fat and unhappy, working in a boutique in a new mall out near Oriole. Webb married for the 4th time to a woman in her 20s and moved from that fancy modern house in Brewer Heights with all his home carpentry to an old stone farmhouse in the south of the county near Galilee that he has totally renovated. That Webb. Anything he wants to do, he does. He really knows how to live. Not really. I was never as impressed with him as you and Janice were. I always thought he was a smart-ass know-it-all. You think Janice was impressed? Thelma is slightly flustered and avoids his eye. Well, there was that one night at least. She didn't complain the next morning. They are remembering a vacation night in the Caribbean when the three couples swapped, Janice getting Webb, Ronnie getting Cindy, and he, to his disappointment, Thelma. She told him that night that she had loved him for years. Neither did I, he says gallantly, though what he chiefly remembers is how tired he was the next morning, and how weird golf seemed, with impossible jungle and deep coral caves just off the fairway. She nods in sarcastic acknowledgment of the compliment, and says, returning to an earlier point in their conversation, "About being mortal. I suppose it affects different people different ways, but for me there's never been a thinning out. Being alive, no matter how sick I feel, is an absolute right to the end. You're absolutely alive, and when you're not, you'll be absolutely something else." Do you and Janice ever go to church? Not too surprised, since Thelma has always been religious in her way. It goes with her conventional decor and secretive sexiness, he answers, "Rarely, actually. The churches down there have this folksy southern thing, and most of our friends happen to be Jewish. Ronnie and I go every Sunday now. One of these new denominations that goes back to fundamentals. You know, we're lost and we're saved." Oh, yeah? These marginal sects depress Harry. At least the moldy old denominations have some history to them. "I believe it sometimes," she says. "It helps the panic when you think of all the things you'll never do that you always thought vaguely you might. Like go to Portugal or get a master's degree." "Well, you did some things. You did Ronnie and me up brown, I'd say, and you did raise 3 sons. You might get to Portugal yet. They say it's cheap, relatively. The only country over there I've ever wanted to go to is Tibet. I can't believe I won't make it. Or never be a test pilot like I wanted to when I was 10. As you say, I still think I'm the center of the universe." "I didn't mean that unkindly. It's charming, Harry." "Except maybe to Nelson." "Even to him. He wouldn't want you any different. Here's a question for you, Thel. You're smart. Whatever happened to the Dalai Lama?" In her clinical appraising mood, nothing should surprise her, but Thelma laughs. "He's still around, isn't he? In fact, hasn't he been in the news a little now that the Tibetans are rioting again?" "Why, Harry? Have you become a devotee of his? Is that why you don't go to church?" He stands, not liking being teased about this. "I've always kind of identified with him. He's about my age. I like to keep track of the guy. I have a gut feeling this'll be his year." As he stands there, the rocking chair on the rebound taps his calves, and his medications make him feel lightheaded. "Thanks for the nuts," he says. There's a lot we could still say. She stands, too, stiffly fighting the plushy grip of the sofa, and with her arthritic waddle steps around the table and places her body next to his, her face at his lapel. She looks up at him with that presumptuous solemnity of women you have fucked. She urges him, "Believe in God, darling. It helps." He squirms inside. "I don't not believe." "That's not quite enough, I fear." "Harry, darling." She likes the sound of darling. "Before you go, let me see him at least." "See who?" "Him, Harry. You. With his bonnet." Thelma kneels, there in her frilled and stagnant dim living room, and unzips his fly. He feels the clinical cool touch of her fingers and sees the gray hairs on the top of her head, radiating from her parting. His heart races in expectation of her warm mouth, as in the old days. But she just says, "Just lovely," and tucks it back, half-hard, into his jockey shorts, and rezips his fly and struggles to her feet. She is a bit breathless, as if from a task of housework. He embraces her, and this time it is he who clings. "The reason I never left Janice, and never can," he confesses, suddenly near tears, maudlin as she said, "is, without her I'm shit. I'm unemployable. I'm too old. All I can be from here on in is her husband." He expects sympathy, but perhaps his mention of Janice is one too many. Thelma goes dead somehow in his arms. "I don't know," she says. "About what?" "About your coming here again." "Oh, let me," he begs, perversely feeling at last in tune with this encounter and excited by her. "Without you I don't have a life." "Maybe nature is trying to tell us something. We're too old to keep being foolish." "Never, Thelma, not you and me." "You don't seem to want me." "I want you. I just don't want Ronnie's little bugs." She pushes at his chest to free herself. "There's nothing wrong with Ronnie. He's as safe and clean as I am." "Yeah, well, that goes without saying, the way you two carry on. That's what I'm afraid of. I tell you, Thelma, you don't know him. He's a madman. You can't see it because you're his loyal wife." "Harry, I think we've reached a point where the more we say, the worse it'll get. Sex isn't what it used to be. You're right about that. We must all be more careful. You be careful. Keep brushing your teeth, and I'll brush mine." It isn't until he is out on Thelma's curved walk, the door with its pulled curtain and beveled glass shut behind him, that he catches her allusion to toothbrushing. Another slam at him and Janice. You can't say anything honest to women. They have minds like the FBI. The robin is still there on the little lawn. Maybe it's sick. All these animals around us have their diseases, too, their histories of plague. It gives Rabbit a beady eye and hops a bit away in Thelma's waxy April grass, but disdains to take wing. Robin, hop. The bold yellow of dandelions has come this week to join that of daffodils and forsythia. Telltale. Flowers attracting bees as we attract each other. Our signals. Smells. Believe in God. If only he were back in her house, he'd fuck her, despite the danger. Instead, he finds safety inside his gray Celica. As he glides away, the stillness of Arrowdale is broken by the return of the lumbering yellow school buses, and their release at every corner of the curved streets of shrilly yelling children. The Toyota Touch, a big blue banner says in the display windows of Springer Motors over on Route 111. 36 months, 36,000 miles, limited warranty on all new models, a lesser poster proclaims, and another, all new Cressidas, powerful new 3.0-liter engine, 190 horsepower,